talking about the way some black men see the LGBTQ plus community. They see it as getting more attention than some of the concerns of black men. I mean, that is something you hear constantly. So, Ben, what do you think? I mean, it's not like I'm, speaking out of school.
Everything has to be taken in context. When you think about civil rights, we must remember that if they can discriminate against them, then it makes it easier to discriminate against us.
I just told you a little while ago, these leaders that they call leaders, this included Lena Horne, this included Dick Gregory, and this included comedians, comics, trumpet players, baseball players. Show me in the white community where a comedian is a white leader. Show me in the white community where a singer is a white leader, or a dancer or a trumpet player is a white leader. These aren't leaders. These are puppets and clowns that have been set up over the white community and over the black community by the white community and have been made celebrities and usually say exactly what they know that the white man wants to hear.
It's one thing to be ignorant of topics, of the facts, when you are a so-called celebrity or a so-called influencer. It's one thing for you to be ignorant. It's another thing when the powers that be, i.e. the Marxists, the communists, and the socialists, the white liberal puppet masters that want to utilize celebrities in the black community to push their misinformation, to push the information that they want to utilize to keep black people ignorant, to keep black people in a permanent state of victimhood, to keep them worshiping at the altar of the Democratic Party. When they utilize these so-called celebrities, when they utilize these so-called influencers who are ignorant, who do not have any clue about what they're talking about, you have to be very, very aware of that. Unfortunately, too many people are not aware of that. And it's not just in the black community. It's throughout America. Some people still watch the news thinking that they're giving you true information. This was never more evident than during the COVID pandemic. People literally thought that whatever Dr. Fauci said was the gospel. If Dr. Fauci told them to put on 3 masks, they put on 3 masks. If Dr. Fauci told them to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boosters, they got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 boosters. And so we have to be aware of the great deception, the spiritual deception that's going on in America. This propaganda that's being pushed by the media, by the entertainment industry, by the government, it's all meant to control how we think. It's all meant to keep us docile so that we don't wake up to what's really going on. And especially as a Christian, we should not be ignorant of the spiritual attacks of the enemy. We should not be ignorant of his devices, as Paul says. We can't be ignorant of his devices. But unfortunately, too many people are ignorant because they want to be ignorant. It's easy to just take what people tell you. It's easy to just accept the status quo without thinking for yourself. That's why the Bible says in Timothy how people are ever learning but never come to the knowledge of the truth. There's so much information out there, but people don't want to come to the knowledge of the truth because the truth causes you to do something. You're either going to do 2 things, deny it or change your behavior. When the truth comes, that's what's so beautiful about the word of God. When the truth comes, you got 2 options, to believe it or to reject it. And nowadays, too many people are rejecting the truth. And they're listening to these ignorant celebrities like Shannon Sharpe and D.L. Hughley and following what they say instead of thinking for themselves.
Or any other kind of ism, without talking about the way some black men see the LGBTQ plus community. They see it as getting more attention than some of the concerns of black men. I mean, that is something you hear constantly. So, Ben, what do you think? I mean, it's not like I'm, speaking out of school.
Everything has to be taken in context. When you think about civil rights, we must remember that if they can discriminate against them, then it makes it easier to discriminate against us.
Roe v. Wade said, hey, women have the right to their bodies, and all of a sudden the Supreme Court struck it down and says, no, you don't. We have control over that. What would that mean to you? So how do you get that? How do you go back and fight to make sure women still have control of their bodies?
So I'm so glad you brought it up, Shannon. First of all, think about one of the most basic rights that you could imagine is the right for you to be able to make decisions about your own body.
Correct.
Your own body.
Your reproductive rights.
And the court just took that right away from women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do. And I think an important emphasis for me is you don't have to give up your faith or deeply held beliefs on this subject to agree the government shouldn't be telling her what to do. If she chooses, she'll talk with her pastor, her priest, her rabbi, her imam, but not the government telling her. And we need to fight against this. We need to understand how many women are suffering miscarriage and being denied help because the doctors are afraid they may end up in jail. In Texas, do you know they provide prison for life for doctors or nurses who provide reproductive care? Prison for life, Shannon. In the state of Georgia, a beautiful young woman, a mother of a 6-year-old son, died because of these Trump abortion bans. The majority of black women and the men who love them live in the South.
Yes.
Do you know in every state in the South except for Virginia, there is a Trump abortion ban?
Yes, I do. Hopefully everybody else knows that also.
Right. And so we all have to stand, regardless of your gender, regardless of your race, your background. We have to stand and say, look, this is just simply not right, and we cannot stand for the notion that Donald Trump could be president of the United States, he who chose a Supreme Court that would take this right from the women of America and the men who love them. And now we have women suffering to such an extent as they are. I think it's one of the most fundamental rights that's at play.
To understand present-day Planned Parenthood, we should understand Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood's founder and hero.
Margaret Sanger is a big proponent of negative eugenics, which was the viewpoint that you should weed out unfit people from the bloodline. So that would be encouraging people not to procreate if they were unfit, feeble-minded, had any kind of mental illness, and that also included forced sterilization.
Words like unfit and feeble-minded were used to describe not only the poor and mentally ill, but also to describe African Americans.
Margaret Sanger stated that birth control is nothing more or less than the facilitation of the process of weeding out the unfit, of preventing the birth of defectives or of those who will become defectives.
In 1921, Margaret Sanger founded the American Birth Control League. Its primary mission was to prevent uncontrolled procreation and establish a world program of birth control.
She states, knowledge of birth control is essentially moral. Its general, though prudent practice must lead to a higher individuality and ultimately to a cleaner race. Margaret Sanger stated that the most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it.
In 1939, Sanger wrote a letter to her eugenics colleague, Dr. Clarence Gamble, a member of the Birth Control Federation of America, in regards to setting up the Negro Project, a birth control clinic for African Americans.
She was speaking about serving what she called the Negro population, and in concluding this portion of the letter, she stated that we do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
Sanger believed that having an African American minister on staff would ease the suspicion.
African American populations were considered some of these unfit members that should be weeded out. So in this letter, she discusses having African Americans serve other African Americans so they wouldn't be aware that they were seeking to terminate them, to exterminate them by the use of birth control and negative eugenics.
Sanger was quite fond of Dr. Ernst Ruden's work, director for the Society for Racial Hygiene. He would later go on to write Nazi Germany's sterilization laws. In 1933, she published his article, Eugenic Sterilization, an Urgent Need, which promoted programs to eliminate the unfit in order to create a super race. In the late 1930s and 40s, knowledge of Nazi atrocities made words like eugenics and population control unpopular in America. So in 1942, to distance itself in name, Margaret Sanger's American Birth Control League became Planned Parenthood. They weren't just being established in the U.S., it was global. A grim fact in American history was the forced sterilization of women in Puerto Rico. In 1936, sterilization programs spearheaded by the International Planned Parenthood Federation, with funding from the U.S. government, sterilized 1/3 of Puerto Rican women by 1968, making it the highest proportion of childbearing-aged persons sterilized in the world. And today,
Planned Parenthood facilities are generally located in low-income areas, which are heavily populated with minorities. And a lot of times they seek to reach those minorities to help them with reproductive rights, they say, with birth control and largely abortion.
Independent studies have concluded that nearly 80% of Planned Parenthood facilities are set up in minority communities. It's no wonder abortion is the leading cause of death among African Americans, higher than all other causes combined. Mounting evidence against Planned Parenthood's beginning to today continues to fuel public outcry.
The American people should seek to immediately defund Planned Parenthood so that our own tax dollars don't go to support this organization who has been exposed to be lying to the American people for many years, for committing these egregious acts against the youngest children among us. They should be immediately defunded.
The black community is the only community where they have these so-called celebrities and so-called influencers be the voice of the community. Most of these people do not have a biblical worldview, and they call themselves Christians. They go to these church Negro churches, these church plant churches, and they believe in the social gospel, and they don't believe in biblical values. These people are puppets and clowns, like Malcolm X said. We're not victims. We are empowered for greatness.